Hello and welcome to Bedtime Life Stories. Settle in, dim the lights, and let your thoughts loosen like ribbons in a soft wind. Tonight's tale is crafted for both teens and adults, a gentle, mysterious journey meant to calm your mind and lull you toward peaceful sleep. Breathe deeply, relax your shoulders, and let the story carry you. Title: The Clockmaker's Lullaby. Chapter 1. The Shop That Slept Between Minutes. The village was quiet enough to hear a cat's paws on cobblestones, and yet at the corner where two narrow streets met, there stood a clockmaker's shop that never quite fit into the day. It didn't open with the sun, nor did it close with the evening bells. It drowsed, it drifted. It seemed to lean softly into the hush between ticks, as if it listened to a time that most people couldn't hear. Tonight, a mist rolled in from the river and carried the faintest scent of lavender and rain-soaked linden. Lanterns glowed like amber fruit along the lanes. You could walk and feel your footsteps soften on the damp stone, your breath slowing, your heart remembering a rhythm older than the clocks themselves. That is when you might notice the shop. A window fogged from within, a sign above the door reading M. Lark, Repairs and Quiet Hours, and a doorbell that chimed like a single note of moonlight. When Elio first found it, he thought perhaps he had wandered into a dream. He was 17, taller than he felt, and quieter than people noticed. He liked forgotten things. The little library where dust hovered like underwater light, the small orchard beyond the bridge, the places grown-ups no longer visited because they had somewhere to be. He had come out to walk the evening into drowsiness, hoping his thoughts would soften too. The bell sang when he opened the door, and a wave of warmth met him. Warmth with the faint fragrance of wood polish, tea leaves, and the curled breath of sleeping gears. Clocks of all shapes lined the shop. Tall grandfather clocks with faces like tranquil moons. Tiny travel clocks that looked like closed shells. Mantel clocks with hands as delicate as the bones of birds. The ticking was a chorus, but not a loud one. It sounded like a soft rain on a pond, or a kitten's purr, or the way pages rustle when no one is reading them. "Welcome," said a voice, low and unhurried. A woman emerged from behind a velvet curtain. She wore a navy waistcoat and a watchmaker's loop perched like a second eye above her right eyebrow. Her hair was silver, but not the kind of silver that comes with worry, more the silver of water in the afternoon sun. "I'm Mara Lark. You found the place that keeps the pauses." "The pauses?" Elio asked, almost whispering. It felt natural to be quiet here, as if words themselves had to remove their shoes before entering. Mara smiled. Everyone thinks they want time, but what they really need is a little space around it. Space to rest. Space to listen. She gestured toward a chair near the counter, where a teapot steamed beside 2 cups. "Sit. Tell me what brought you." Elio sat. The chair sighed, as if glad to stop pretending to be a chair and simply be a place to rest. He watched steam rise in curlicues, each coil a tiny question that answered itself. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "It's like my thoughts run in circles." "Ah," Mara said, pouring tea with a motion so smooth it looked like a practiced lullaby. "Circles are fine. It's the speed that knots them. Slowly is a better shape." She set a cup before him. The porcelain was warm, the rim thin, the tea the color of winter honey. "Sip. Listen. You hear it?" Elio paused. The ticking felt different now, like 1,000 small hearts agreeing on a single kind rhythm. He closed his eyes. Between the ticks there was a very slight hush. He leaned toward that hush as one might lean toward a whisper. "There it is," Mara said softly. "Between moments, imagine that each tick is a step, and between steps you sway a little. That sway is where sleep begins." He opened his eyes. "Do your clocks help people sleep?" "They help people remember how," she said. "Sleep isn't lost. It is only waiting in a place that is patient." Mara rose and guided him through the shop. Here the clocks did not argue as they sometimes do in markets and waiting rooms. They cooperated. They offered the same measured mercy. "This one," she said, resting her palm on a walnut case, "once belonged to a singer who forgot to breathe between songs. This one," she touched a brass pocket watch, "kept time for a traveler who never stayed long enough to meet a sunset. They learned to pause. You can too." He felt a flutter in his chest that wasn't worry. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was relief. An old relief he had known as a child when a story began. And he knew he would not be asked to fix anything, only to follow. "What does M stand for?" he asked, nodding toward the sign above the counter. Mara's eyes glimmered with humor. "Many things. Mostly. Meanwhile. This shop lives in the meanwhile. Would you like to hear the lullaby of the clocks?" He nodded, and she turned a small key behind the counter. Somewhere, a music box stirred. A melody unfolded like a silk ribbon, gentle and unadorned, twining with the ticking. Elio's shoulders loosened. His breath found the tune. "The world is still out there," Mara said, her voice barely above the soft song. "But for now it can wait. This is a safe corner of time, and corners are made for leaning into." That night, Elio left the shop with the shape of the lullaby in his lungs. He stepped into the mist, which had thickened into a hush the color of milk at dawn, and he thought, perhaps the night is not an emptiness to cross, but a room to rest in. He walked home slowly. He swayed between steps, and somewhere between minutes, sleep brushed his eyelids like a moth's wing. Behind him, the shop's window fogged a bit more, as if it too exhaled. Inside, Mara wound a clock that looked like the spine of a small dragon, and listened to the pauses with the affection of a gardener, watching seeds rest in soil. The bell over the door made a single sound, just one drop of moonlight, and then all was quiet again. Sleep does not need to be chased, she thought, setting the key down. It only needs a path, and someone to turn down the lamps along the way. And somewhere, far beyond the lanes and the river, in a place where the sky keeps its deepest indigo, the night smiled and closed her eyes. Chapter 2. The Nightbird's Promise. Morning came slowly, the way it does when it respects the dreams it must cross to arrive. Elio woke with the vague, comforting sense that he had been carried. He remembered mist and clocks, and the letter M turning into the word meanwhile, which felt like a small porch where you could wait and watch the world gently pass. The day asked little of him. He helped at the bakery, the warm air like bread-scented fog. He carried bags for Mrs. Vost with her lavender gloves. He lingered at the bridge, watching the river move like a thought that had decided not to hurry. But in the slowness, a new curiosity arose and perched on his shoulder like a tame bird. He wanted to visit the shop again, not because he needed anything repaired, but because he wanted to learn how the pauses were kept. When the second evening softened the roofs with light, he returned. The door's bell chimed its moonlit note. This time he noticed something he hadn't before, a small framed drawing behind the counter. It showed a bird with spread wings hovering above a sleeping face. The title, handwritten in a looping script, said, "The Nightbird's Promise." Mara glanced at the drawing, then at Elio, smiling as though she had been expecting his question. "Have you met the Nightbird?" Elio shook his head. "Ah," she said, and poured tea. "The Nightbird has feathers the color of last light. It is not an owl, though it knows what owls know. It is not a lark, though it loves the open air. It comes when the mind is tangled and perches above the bed, humming a single note that unties knots. You do not need to see it. Most who meet it only ever hear its promise, which is this: if you lie down, I will carry your worries while you rest. I will return them in the morning as small as they really are." Elio closed his eyes and listened to the clocks. Between ticks, he imagined a soft wing beat. "Does the Nightbird live here?" "The Nightbird lives anywhere it is welcome," Mara said, as if stating a simple truth. "This shop is just a place the promise likes to echo." They moved slowly around the room, stopping at a case where a row of pocket watches lay like polished stones. Mara lifted one and placed it in Elio's palm. It was unexpectedly warm. The front was engraved with a tiny constellation. When he pressed the button, the lid sprang open, and a voice, not a sound, but a feeling, said, "Wait." He listened harder, and the feeling continued. "Wait until your breath reaches your feet. Wait until your heartbeat enters your hands. Wait until what matters is no longer in a hurry, and what hurries no longer matters." He exhaled. For a moment he felt tall and small at once, like a mountain remembering it was made of grains of sand. He looked up to find Mara watching him kindly, as if he were a clock that had found its rhythm. "Why do you keep so many clocks?" he asked. "Because every one of them has a song," she said. "Some sing for those who count, some for those who forget, some for those who would like to be counted, and some for those who need to be forgotten for a while by the world so they can remember themselves." "Do they ever sing for you?" he asked softly. Mara's smile was like a lamp turned low. "Often, particularly at closing. Even keepers need keeping." They sat at the counter with their tea and spoke of small, gentle things, the way frost writes its own alphabets on windows, how cats seem to know the hour of a nap, how rain chooses its favorite roofs. Each subject was a stepping stone. Between the stones, the pauses grew wider, like shallow pools of still water. The music box hummed. Elio felt the corners of his eyelids gather the weight of sleep, though he had no intention yet of sleeping. "May I come again?" he asked. "Please do," Mara said. "Some people bring broken watches, some bring broken evenings." He nodded. "I'll bring my evenings." "Good," she said, writing something on a small card and sliding it across to him. On one side, in that looping hand, were the words, "If you lie down, I will carry your worries while you rest." On the other side, a tiny drawing of a feather. He tucked the card into his pocket, as if it were a talisman. The bell chimed when he left, and the street outside felt a fraction closer to a dream. The mist had not returned, but the air knew it might. In the oak tree across the lane, a bird-shaped shadow shifted, and for a moment, Elio thought he heard a note so gentle that it felt like a fingertip on the surface of a still pond. That night, before sleep, he read the card silently. He placed it on his nightstand beside a small glass of water, and the book he never bothered to finish, because he liked the beginning too much. Lying down, He imagined the night bird resting above him, its wings folded like blessings. Breath by breath, he felt the end of the day open like a window, and the hush between ticks widened until it was large enough to lie down in. Sleep arrived without ceremony, only with the soft sense of being watched over by something that required nothing from him except his permission to rest. And somewhere in the dark, a promise was kept without anyone having to hold it. Chapter 3. The House That Learned to Breathe. There was a house at the far end of the village that always seemed a little out of breath. Its windows fogged in summer, its doors swelled in autumn, its roof sighed in winter beneath the smallest snow. People said the house was unfortunate, but Mara Lark said it had simply forgotten how to breathe. One afternoon, Elio found Mara closing the shop early. A brass sign hung in the window. "Back soon. Teaching a house to breathe." He stopped, half smiled, and when she noticed him, she laughed as if she'd shared a secret, before deciding it could be shared again. "Coming?" she asked, lifting a small case of tools. "If you're teaching a house to breathe," Elio said, "I wouldn't want to miss the lesson." The walk there took them down lanes lined with hedges that hummed with sleepy bees. Mara walked like someone who had always known where she was going, and had made peace with the fact that getting there is most of the joy. When they reached the house, Elio saw what people meant. The shutters were closed too tight. The chimney was taller than it had to be, as if straining for air. The garden, though, was tender. Daisies leaned against the stoop as if offering their simple, honest faces to anyone who needed company. Mara stepped up to the door and knocked 3 times. Knock, pause, knock, longer pause, knock. "Breathing knocks," she explained. "Inhale, exhale, rest." The door opened with a modest groan. Inside, the air had that stillness of a held breath. Mara set her tool case on a table and took out items Elio recognized, screwdrivers, brushes, and others he did not. A small bell, a glass vial of something that looked like melted shadows, a strip of silk. "First," she said, "we listen." They stood in the entryway, listening in the quiet. In time, a sound emerged, the slow creak of a stair that wanted to settle, the soft rasp of a window eager to crack open, the low, tight hum of a pipe wishing to shake out its stiffness. "Good," she murmured. "It wants to breathe." They moved from room to room. Mara dusted a vent and rang the bell once, the sound easing into the corners, like a cat finding its favorite chair. She painted the window frames with a whisper of the shadow vial, and the glass sighed, releasing a fog Elio had not noticed until it was gone. On the mantel, she placed the strip of silk. It lifted with the smallest currents and settled again, just as a chest rises and falls during sleep. Elio watched, feeling his own breath fall into step with the house's new rhythm. "Why do you do this?" he asked, voice hushed by the honor of the work. "Because homes forget," she said, "and people forget, and even rivers sometimes forget. They don't have to rush. Reminding is a soft kind of repair." They found an old clock in a hall, its hands stopped at 2:17. Mara wound it gently, set it to the present, then tilted it a breath to the left, a hair to the right, until its heart remembered how to begin again. The first tick was shy. The second was brave. The third was a relieved laugh. By the time they were done, the house felt different. It wasn't brighter or larger, just more at ease. The silk on the mantel rose and fell like a sleeping cat. The windows didn't fog. The stairs' creaks no longer sounded like complaints. They sounded like a body-making room. On the way back, Elio noticed the world had changed too, though he suspected it was only that he had. The willows by the river exhaled in their shaggy way. The clouds above gave the sun a chance to rest behind them. The road didn't push his feet forward. It simply laid itself beneath them, one soft stone at a time. "Do you teach people to breathe too?" he asked. "Only by example," Mara said. "People don't like to be told, but they love to be shown." He looked at her and thought of the sign: repairs and quiet hours. Perhaps the repairs were small, dust here, loosen there, but the quiet hours were the real work, the kind that sinks into bone and lets the world become bearable. That evening, Elio lay in bed and felt the house around him breathe. The nightbird, not seen, only felt, shifted its weight above his bed, and its promise settled over him like a blanket worn thin by love. He inhaled. The village inhaled. The clocks inhaled. Then together, they let go. The pause between moments stretched like a hammock, and he lay into it, into the feeling that nothing urgent could cross the room without softening its edges first. If dreams came, they could come gently, and if they did not, this rest was dream enough. Chapter 4. The River That Carried Names. There is a kind of river that carries more than water. It carries the words people murmur to it, the names they tuck into its current like notes in bottles. On nights when the moon is thin as a sigh, if you stand on the bridge and listen, you might hear those names wash over stones, softened by the journey, tendered by time. Elio found Mara on the bridge one such night, holding a small paper boat cupped in both hands. Lanterns along the railing swayed like sleepy eyes opening and closing. The river below gurgled like someone speaking kindly to themselves. "Whose name?" Elio asked, nodding to the boat. Mara smiled. "Sometimes people leave their names with the river for a while when they feel too heavy for them. You can pick them up again in the morning." She set the boat on the water and nudged it away. The current accepted it, guiding it past a cluster of reeds that murmured like old friends. "Have you ever left yours?" he asked. "Once," she said. "It came back with fewer edges." They leaned on the railing and watched boats drift. Some little squares of paper, some folded like cranes, some no more than a leaf with a syllable written upon it in careful ink. Above, the sky strewed stars like breadcrumbs for anyone who needed a way home. "Do clocks ever float?" Elio asked, and Mara laughed. "Time does," she said, "but clocks prefer shelves." They stood, and the stillness around them grew into a kind of quiet music. The nightbird's promise hung in the air, unspoken but present, the way the scent of lilac remains in a room even after the bouquet is gone. Elio rested his chin on his arms and let his thoughts become soft, soft enough that they could sit beside him without jostling for attention. "Tell me about the lullaby," he said. "The one the clocks sing." Mara nodded. "It has 3 verses. The first says, 'You are here now, and that is enough.' The second says, 'You are allowed to stop.' The third says, 'Nothing urgent will lose you while you rest.'" She paused. "When people remember those lines, the world loosens its jaw." They walked back through streets that knew their footsteps. The shop window glowed like a kept promise. Inside, the clocks welcomed them with their many small hearts. Mara lifted the lid of the music box. The melody unfurled, gentle as rain on linen. Elio sat and closed his eyes. He imagined the river easing names over stones, rounding them, polishing them, sending them back kinder than before. He thought of his own name, too sharp sometimes in his mouth. He pictured it floating, then returned to him in the morning like a stone warmed by sun. "Would you like to leave something here tonight?" Mara asked. He considered. "Perhaps I'll leave the part of me that thinks I have to be interesting to be worth the evening," he said finally. "I'll pick it up tomorrow. Smaller." Mara nodded, as if he had chosen a good stone to set down. "I'll keep it on the mantel with the silk," she said. "It will learn to breathe." Elio smiled, and the night smiled back. And in the breathing shop with its breathing clocks and its keeper who knew how to wind pauses as if they were springs, he felt sleep arrive like a friend who comes through the back door, familiar enough not to knock. The lullaby filled the room. Between its notes, there were rests, and in those rests, a world gentle enough to enter without armor. Chapter 5. The Hour That Waited Up. There comes a night, in every life, when an hour waits up for you. It sits like a lamplight left on in a kitchen, low and patient, neither rushing you nor insisting you come. It is there if you need it, and content if you do not. It knows you will arrive when your feet remember to go home. Elio found such an hour on a mild evening when the wind folded itself neatly and tucked behind the trees, and the moon wore a shawl of clouds. He had been restless without reason. Nothing wrong, nothing urgent, only a soft disquiet that brushed his thoughts like a cat that can't settle. He walked to the shop because that's where the gentle hours gathered, like birds on a wire, singing quietly in their sleep. The bell chimed. Mara looked up from a ledger, where she seemed to be balancing not numbers, but breaths. "There you are," she said, as if greeting the hour rather than the boy. "I couldn't find the pause," he admitted. "Then we'll widen one," she said, and lit a small candle in a blue glass cup. Its light made the walls look like the inside of a seashell. She placed the candle on the counter and set beside it a small bowl of stones. "Choose one," she said. "Not with your eyes, with your fingers." He did. He chose a stone that was neither smooth nor rough, a small, honest stone that fit in his palm as if it had been waiting for it. "Good," she said. "Hold it and tell it what you don't want to hold for now." Elio held the stone. He didn't speak aloud. He didn't need to. The stone knew. He placed it in the bowl. Mara nodded. The clocks seemed to lower their voices, as if they knew a secret had been set down to sleep. "Would you like to hear the fourth verse?" she asked, and his eyebrows rose. "There's a fourth verse?" "It only sings when asked," she said. "It says, 'If you forget the way will remember you.'" The music box responded the way still water responds to a dropped feather. Barely perceptibly, but completely. The melody extended, a few extra notes slipping in like shy guests who had finally arrived. The air warmed by a degree that only hearts can measure. Elio felt his breath lengthen. The room widened. The pause grew from something he sought to, something he stood inside. "Thank you," he whispered, not certain whether to the music, the clocks, the candle, the stone, or the woman who kept them all in the tender order of rest. Mara poured tea. They drank. Outside, a night breeze pawed the door and then decided against entering. The hour waited up, and they let it. They didn't fill it with talk. They didn't demand meaning of it. They let it be a room with the lamp left on, and they simply sat inside it until their bodies understood that doing nothing can be the most generous thing to do. When Elio rose to leave, he didn't feel cured of restlessness so much as befriended by it. He understood that it was not an enemy, only a guest who needed a place to sit for a while. "Bring the stone back when you're ready," Mara said, "or leave it with the river. It knows what to do." He nodded, stepped into the night, and breathed in air that had learned to be soft. Above him, just for a moment, he heard wings, and then the gentle promise, "If you lie down, I will carry your worries while you rest." He walked home slowly, the way one walks when someone has turned the lamps down along the way and the path is lit by kindness. Later, he would sleep. Perhaps he already was. Chapter 6. The Clockmaker's Lullaby. In time, as all stories eventually come to the quiet at their edge, Elio realized that the shop had taught him the small magic that lives in ordinary nights. He still had days that asked too much, thoughts that ran, moments when the world raised its voice, but beneath those, there was now a river that carried names and returned them kindly, a house that remembered to breathe, a bridge where lanterns watched like gentle guardians, a bowl of stones that kept safe what he no longer needed to hold, and a bird, invisible yet certain, keeping a promise on rafters and lamp cords and the thin air above pillows. On the last evening of this part of the tale, the mist returned, lavender and linden scented, and the shop's window fogged as if it too were ready to settle. Elio entered, and the bell sang its note. Mara looked up with that steady smile, the one that made rooms trust themselves. "Ready to keep the lullaby?" she asked. "I think so," he said. She handed him a small key, familiar and new at once. "For when you need to wind the pauses yourself," she said. "Turn it slowly. You'll know when to stop." He put the key in his pocket. They stood for a moment, saying nothing. The clocks ticked, the pauses held, the music box waited. The candle in the blue glass whispered light. "Will the shop always be here?" he asked. Mara looked toward the door as if it opened not to the street, but to all the meanwhile places in the world. "As long as someone keeps a quiet hour," she said. "As long as someone winds a pause. As long as the night bird has promises to keep." Elio nodded. He felt the gentle weight of everything he had learned, not heavy, not burdensome, but like a blanket that had been warmed at a fire and placed over his knees. He closed his eyes. The lullaby rose. "You are here now, and that is enough. You are allowed to stop. Nothing urgent will lose you while you rest. If you forget the way will remember you." The words were not sung. They were understood. The melody that carried them was the old, soft tune of tick and hush, of step and sway, of breath in and breath out. He walked home with the key in his pocket and the lullaby in his lungs. The night bird perched above his bed, invisible and certain. The house breathed. The river carried names. The hour waited up if he needed it, and even if he didn't. And you, listening now, letting your breath find the slow shape of sleep, can keep the lullaby too. You can leave your name by the river and pick it up in the morning, smaller at the edges. You can lay the weight you carry in a bowl for safekeeping. You can ask the fourth verse to sing if you wish. You can listen for the bell that chimes like a drop of moonlight. You can knock gently. Knock, pause, knock, longer pause, knock. You can open the door. The clocks agree. It is time to rest. Between ticks, there is a place to lie down. The night bird is here, and its promise is simple and certain. If you lie down, it will carry your worries while you sleep. In the morning, they will be as small as they really are. Let your breath lengthen. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your thoughts become guests who know when to step quietly into the other room. The world can wait in the meanwhile. Close your eyes. The lullaby keeps itself now. Good night from Bedtime Life Stories.